Hello and welcome to the Telegraph studio and Business Reporter's Human Capital campaign, hosted by the Telegraph Online. I'm Alistair Greener and today I'm going to be talking to Ben Betts from HT2 about why big data is so important to organisations today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right now there's about 75 million unemployed people around the world. Yet at the same time we have organisations who say we don't have the right skills in our workforce. So how do you go about solving that problem?
It's a tremendous problem, a global problem, if you will. We've got education systems putting out students that can't get jobs, 75 million unemployed young people around the world. And yet we've got businesses with jobs that can't be filled. I think the root of the problem is the standardization that we go through, the commoditization of education. And this has led to this contradiction. We've got lots of jobs available and no one to fill them. What I think we need to think about is how do we make education less one size fits all and more one size fits one. We need to think about how can we personalize learning. And if you look at some of the world's technological gurus, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, they're promising to put their life's fortunes towards personalising education because they think that might be the solution to the problem.
Now, of course, they're both leaders of giant technology companies. So is there actually a role for technology in solving this issue?
More than just technology, I think there's a role for big data. So if we think about what Bill Gates says, he wants to personalise education. Well, how do you do that? Well, I think it takes three things. First of all, you've got to know something about what somebody's done previously. We've got to know your educational history. Second of all, we've got to know where you want to go. So we know what you've done, but do we know where you want to go in the future? And third of all, we can benefit from what others have done before. How has somebody progressed who's gone before you to be successful in getting to that career, in getting into that job? Right now, we're not very smart about these things. We can't really tell you what others have done to be successful. We generally don't know your educational history, and we don't often ask people what it is they actually want to do to actually personalise the learning in the first place. So we're failing on all of these parts.
So what are the signals that organisations might be noticing that would imply they need to be adopting the use of big data if it's not already on their agenda?
That's exactly the point, if it's not on their agenda. If you think about today's organisations, knowledge companies, data is everywhere. We only have to look out on the floor here to know that knowledge is flowing through everybody's fingertips. So if you are not already capturing what is going on in your organisation, especially when it comes to learning data, then you're letting it slip through your fingers already. You've already got a problem. So that's my number one signal. You've got to do something about capturing that data. And if you don't have a strategy, you already have a problem. Fixing that problem is not necessarily easy. Big data doesn't necessarily lead to obvious or immediate answers. Correlation doesn't mean that you've found the cause of something. And actually getting to grips with this stuff can be quite complicated. This is fundamentally stats, data scientists, not people that you have lying around just waiting on the shop floor for some data to flow through them. You're going to need some expertise.
So how do you bring them together, people and technology?
Let me give you an example. So let me take you to the world of work. Intercontinental Hotels, IHG Group, massive worldwide corporation, very well known for superb customer services. They had a really big problem though. Actually, their customer service was almost too good. So when it came to individual line managers talking with their reportees, their employees, they would find that they didn't really have very good, honest conversations. So IHG took this at a strategic level and said, we need to do something about it. They wanted to train all 3,000 of their first level leaders in having brilliant conversations. So very much a people problem, but they wanted to use technology to do it. They couldn't get everybody in a room. So they created what they called a massive open online course, or a MOOC. And in this MOOC, they had 3,000 leaders come to discuss different ways of having different conversations, better conversations. And it wasn't about just consuming content. It was about each one of those leaders uploading back, putting their thoughts in, recording videos, and then being critical of each other, but in a friendly framework. They had wonderful results, 30,000 contributions over the course of 4 weeks. And then they did something really clever. They used big data to analyze what was being said and to find out whether all of that social learning made any actual difference. And what they found was that about 10% of the conversations that they saw in that time were evidence of people changing their behaviour, trying something new in the workplace. So really, when you talk about bringing people and data together, that's it for me. We want to recognise people for the skills and for the experiences that they already have. And we don't need them to be going through standardised tests to do that. We just need the technology to know what they're already really good at.
You talked about IHG there. Are there any other examples of organisations who are starting to use big data?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take you from education right the way through to employment. There's a wonderful initiative right here in the UK by JISC. This is the UK's R&D body for higher and further education. And they've created a project that's around open learning analytics. So the idea is that any university or college in the UK will be able to use their open learning analytics framework to apply predictive technologies to their students. What that actually means is that they'll be able to tell when a student is at risk of dropping out. And that's a huge deal for UK colleges and universities, getting people from the start through to the finish. So JISC's project will make the tools and technology available for people to do that fundamentally free of charge. That's a huge deal here in the UK. Thinking about more of an employment thing, but sticking with education, teachers. There is a bit of a crisis in the UK at the moment. We don't have enough teachers to go around. And so when I look at people like TES Global, this is a global network of teachers, but with a focus on the UK. What they're doing is coming up with innovative new ways to recognise what people can already do, trying to move people through being a teaching assistant right the way through to qualified teacher status and beyond. On TES's global network, teachers are already uploading and adding resources, lesson plans, best practices every day, hundreds of thousands of resources. What if we could recognise a teacher for the excellence they show in the classroom and in those online resources and award that with a qualification? That's where we can go with data. We can recognise you for the skills you've already got to enable you to get the job you need.
Okay, so let's say an organisation says, okay, I take this on board, I recognise I need the help of big data. What do you do at HT2 to actually help them?
Well, we've got a very simple three-step process. It's about storing, sorting, and sharing that data. So first up, storing. You have to have somewhere to put all of this data. We happen to have made a piece of software called Learning Locker. This is the world's most installed learning record store. So it's the most popular piece of software globally for storing learning records. And we use that in organisations as that central point of where all of this experience can come together. It's free and it's open source. That means anybody can download, install and use it without having to pay a license fee and without being locked in. And that's tremendously important if you think about data ownership and privacy and governance. You have to own this piece. So first up, you've got to have somewhere to store it. Then you've got to sort through it because that's a lot of data that's there, and we employ teams of data scientists, which is a bit of a fancy word for statisticians, to be able to come in and understand what's going on with that data, to spot trends, to spot instances of where things can be done better, and to build models on which your organisation can learn from. The final part of that is sharing it. What are we going to do with these insights now that we have them? And there are two places you can send them. One is you can share those insights with people. So if we're going to suggest to a tutor that a student is in trouble, then we've got to know who to send that to. They've got to know what it is they're going to do about it. And we've got to do it just in time. There's no point doing it 6 weeks after the student's gone. The other alternative is to share it with a system. And for this we use APIs, application programming interfaces, to connect Learning Locker into other systems so that we can alert those systems just in time of what's going on elsewhere in the organisation. Store, sort, share. Very simple.
Well, you've certainly shown us that big data very much has a role in the future of organisations and how important that role indeed is. Ben Betts from HT2, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.